Hi, everybody. Antonio here with another daily reminder for you. And today's daily reminder is that there is a beauty in simplicity. One of the things I find myself doing quite often when I'm working with clients in particular is helping them simplify in order to multiply their business. Because what I find a lot of times is that people will create complexity around what they do, and it stifles growth. It impedes the ability to actually get things done. And in that, businesses tend to lose revenue. And I find that I think most entrepreneurs do that because we're buying into this false narrative of how you become successful is by hustling, grinding, doing these grandiose things, when really success comes from a few very simple things, you know, consistently doing the right activities. That's pretty much it. Very rarely will you find businesses that have made it because of complexity. Now, a lot of times businesses will grow and get complex, then they find themselves in situations, but very rarely will you find a business growing because of complexity. And that applies to every aspect of our lives. And one of my favorite people to quote, Einstein says, it's a famous quote he has that says, everything should be made as simple as possible, but not simpler. It's such a brilliant quote, in my opinion, because, you know, first of all, yes, things should be made simple, not complex, not convoluted. Things should be made simple as possible, but not simpler. And I take that last part of that quote as kind of a beautiful irony, in that trying to make a thing more simple than it needs to be creates complexity in and of itself. So I think, what Einstein's saying in that quote is, what's your MVP, your minimal viable process, your minimal viable product, your minimal viable whatever, your minimal viable. What is the minimal viable? I call it an MVA. What's the minimum viable activity to accomplish the thing that you're trying to accomplish? What's the simplest way of doing it? The very simplest way of doing it, and not trying to make it simpler than the simplicity of just getting the thing done. So there's a beauty in simplicity, in that it frees us up to really act and truly get the thing done. I often talk about Vince Lombardi, one of the winningest coaches of NFL history. He talks about why he was so successful, and it originates from his "This is a football" speech. Vince Lombardi would go in the locker room at the beginning of the season and say, "Gentlemen, this is a football." And he'd say, "These are the stitching. This is the, et cetera, et cetera." Then he'd take them out to the field and say, "This is a football field. It's 100 yards. Space between this line and this line is a yard, et cetera, et cetera." And again, he and I'll just finish the story. The question becomes, why is this coach telling professional football players who are getting paid hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars, about the basics of football? And his response is that the basics win games: running, tackling, throwing, not the trick plays, not the complexities of, this particular type of defense versus that offense, etc. Running, tackling, and throwing is what wins games. So look at your life, look at your business, look at your relationship. Where can you find beauty in simplicity? What areas of your life are you making more complex than necessary for whatever reason? I heard someone say the other day, love is hard. Is it? Is it really? If you buy into that and you believe that, then that's how love is going to show up for you. Now, am I suggesting that relationships don't take effort, that they don't take growth, the work, if you want to call it? Yeah, of course they do. I think relationships are one of the best ways for us to see ourselves. A really old friend of mine used to say, a marriage is like getting a PhD in yourself, because you get an opportunity to see yourself in a very succinct way that you wouldn't normally see yourself. And you have to deal with that. You got to deal with who you are in that relationship. But it doesn't have to be complex. Doesn't have to be. Some people, you ask them, hey, you in a relationship? Oh, it's complicated. Is it? Is it really? and again, it's not to oversimplify, right? It's not to oversimplify someone's situation. It's not to take away from the sincerity of their situation. But is it really complicated, or are you making it complicated? Are you making it complicated? Are you allowing complication to exist in that relationship because you think that's what's normal? You think that's what's acceptable. You think that's what it takes to have a successful relationship. It's complexity. Maybe there's even some addiction. Maybe there's some addiction to complexity. I remember having a really interesting conversation with a woman who was addicted to drama. And she would create drama in her relationship when it didn't exist. And in our conversation, this was when I was life/relationship coach. In our conversation, what we revealed was that her parents had this constant back and forth, yelling, making up, yelling, making up, arguing, this, and that was what she saw to be a successful relationship. So if that didn't exist, if the arguing and the going through the phone and the et cetera, if those relationship drama things did not exist, she was bored. And well, those were her words. She says, I get bored easily. When it really was, there was a unfulfillment there for her. She wasn't fulfilled because she thought those things were what people do. You go through your mate's phone, you go through their pockets, you accuse them even though you know they haven't done anything. That's what you do. She was creating that complexity in her relationship. So take a moment. Take a moment. What are some of the areas in your life that you may be creating unnecessary complexity? That's a really good question, Naima says. Yes, it's a really great question to ask ourselves at any time. And maybe you're not creating complexity intentionally. maybe the complexity that's there is a part of what you think is supposed to be there, like hustling, grinding. Some people think that's a part of what it takes to be successful in business when it is not. So here's a great way to look at it. One of two questions. One, where are you creating complexity? Two, where could you allow in simplicity? Where could you allow in more simplicity in your life, in whatever it is you're doing, whether it's your business, your relationship, whatever? Where can you allow in the beauty of simplicity? So that's it for today's daily reminder, guys. I've got a simple request: like, comment, share. There we go. How simple was that? We'll see you tomorrow for another daily reminder.